It is the winter of 1850, in a small, candlelit study tucked away in the heart of Prussia. Outside, snow falls in thick, silent curtains against frost-covered windows, muffling the world into a cathedral of stillness. The streets below are empty save for the occasional echo of hoofbeats on cobblestone, fading quickly into the vast, indifferent cold. Inside this modest room, the air carries the scent of coal smoke, old leather, and the metallic tang of scientific instruments. The fragrance of human curiosity pressed against the overwhelming mystery of existence. Here, hunched over a wooden desk scarred by years of calculation, sits a figure wrapped in a heavy wool coat. Before him lie scattered papers covered in equations that will one day unlock the universe's most profound secret. That everything, every star, every civilization, every anxious thought spinning through your mind right now is slowly dying. The single candle beside him flickers, its flame trembling as if uncertain of its own brief existence, casting dancing shadows that seem to whisper of impermanence. This man does not yet know that he is discovering the mathematics of mortality itself. He believes he is simply studying steam engines and heat flow. But in these quiet calculations, he is uncovering the universe's deepest truth, that all energy dissipates, all order dissolves, and all things must eventually find their way to perfect eternal rest. You, lying there in your own darkness, separated from this Prussian winter by nearly 2 centuries, already know this feeling intimately. The weight of entropy presses upon you each sleepless night. The sense that your energy is finite, that your warmth is slowly leaking away into the cold indifference of existence. Your anxiety, your exhaustion, your restless mind, they are not personal failings, but echoes of this same cosmic law. Tonight, we will explore the end of everything together. Not to frighten you, but to offer you the deepest comfort imaginable. The promise that all struggle, all suffering, all the relentless demands of consciousness will one day dissolve into the universe's final, perfect sleep. You are lying there in the darkness, and the silence around you feels absolute. Perhaps it is that hollow hour past midnight when even the distant hum of traffic has faded into nothingness, when your phone lies silent beside you, its screen dark and undemanding. The house settles with small, ancient creaks. Your thoughts move in slow, heavy circles, returning again and again to that familiar ache. The sense that you exist behind an invisible wall, fundamentally separate from everything and everyone around you. This loneliness is not simply the absence of company. You have felt it even in crowded rooms, even surrounded by those who claim to love you. It is something deeper, more persistent, like a low note that resonates beneath all other sounds. You, who are lying there awake while the world sleeps, likely carry this isolation as a secret shame. You scroll through carefully curated lives on glowing screens, watching others appear effortlessly connected, and wonder what essential ingredient you lack. In your social anxiety, you rehearse conversations that never come, analyze the distances between what you meant and what was heard, feel the gap between your soul and the world widening with each interaction. The loneliness feels like evidence of your failure to connect, to belong, to be enough. But what if this ache you carry is not a personal failing at all? What if your isolation is not evidence of inadequacy, but rather your participation in the most fundamental pattern of existence itself? Look beyond your ceiling now, beyond the clouds, into the obsidian depths of space. The stars that pierce the darkness appear as a crowded field of light, a community of brilliance huddled together against the void. But this is a trick of perspective, a lie told by distance. In reality, these celestial bodies exist in profound solitude. Our nearest stellar neighbor, Proxima Centauri, lies over 25 trillion miles away. A gulf so vast that light itself, the fastest messenger in the universe, takes 4 years to cross the abyss. The Andromeda Galaxy, that spiral of 2 trillion stars, drifts 2.5 million light-years from our own Milky Way, and this distance grows larger with each passing moment. The universe is expanding, accelerating outward, carrying every cosmic structure further from every other. Galaxies flee into ever-deepening isolation, eventually to be alone in their own pockets of space, unable even to see their neighbors through the darkness. This is not poetry. This is physics. This is entropy expressing itself on the grandest scale. The tendency of all things toward separation, toward independence, toward the dissolution of all bonds. Every atom in your body, bound together now in the temporary arrangement you call yourself, will one day drift apart. The molecules that form your anxious thoughts will scatter into the cosmic background. Even consciousness itself, that cathedral of awareness you inhabit so completely, is simply a brief, local decrease in entropy, a temporary gathering of order that the universe will eventually reclaim. Your loneliness, then, is not a defect. It is cosmic honesty. You are feeling what the universe itself feels, if it could feel. You are experiencing the fundamental condition of all matter and energy. The drift towards solitude that governs everything from quarks to quasars. The anxiety of separation is the one experience we all share perfectly, the billionaire in his penthouse, the monk in his cell, the lover sleeping beside a partner they can never fully know. Tonight, as you lie in this darkness, you are not broken. You are astronomically accurate. You are a conscious star, burning briefly in the vast night, magnificently alone. And in that recognition, in that acceptance of your place in this ancient pattern, you can finally stop fighting the current and learn to drift with the same patient grace that guides the galaxies themselves toward their destined silence. Close your eyes and travel backward with me through time, to an era when the world was transforming itself with fire and iron. We arrive in the cities of 19th century Europe, Manchester, Paris, Berlin. Places blackened by coal and ambition, where snow mixes with ash and settles on rooftops with the same indifferent hand. The air thrums with a new sound, the rhythmic hiss and clank of steam engines, those magnificent iron lungs exhaling clouds of white breath into the frigid air. These machines seem to promise humanity's dominion over nature itself, converting fuel into motion with what appeared to be miraculous efficiency. The age was drunk on power, on pistons and gears, on the astonishing revelation that heat could be disciplined into progress. But in dim, smoky rooms far from the factory floors, a different kind of quiet struggle was unfolding. Men like Sadi Carnot bent over notebooks lit by candle and lamplight, their ink-stained fingers tracing the hidden grammar of heat. They were surrounded by diagrams of boilers and cylinders, not stars and galaxies. Yet without fully knowing it, they were writing the obituary of the universe. These solitary figures became the reluctant prophets of a devastating truth that would haunt physics forever. Carnot, a young French military engineer, was among the first to glimpse this cosmic law while studying steam engine efficiency in the 1820s. He died at 36, his revolutionary insights largely ignored during his brief life. He had imagined a perfect, idealized engine and discovered something quietly devastating. Even in his most utopian designs, not all heat could be converted into useful work. Some energy must always be surrendered without negotiation to the colder reservoir. This was not a flaw of engineering, but of reality itself. Picture Lord Kelvin decades later staring into his fireplace on a rainy Scottish night. As the coals turned to ash and heat dissipated into the cold room, never to return to the fire, he formulated the inevitable conclusion: energy flows only one way, from concentrated to dispersed, from useful to useless. Rudolf Clausius, working in the Prussian cold, gave this phenomenon its name, entropy, from the Greek word for transformation. Together, these men looked at the steam engines of their age and saw not humanity's triumph over nature, but rather a perfect demonstration of nature's ultimate victory: that all systems run down, all gradients flatten, all fires dim. You, lying there exhausted in your 21st century bed, already know this truth intimately. You live in a culture that, like the Victorian age, demands perpetual motion from you. Your workplace treats you as an engine that should run without pause. Your devices ping with endless notifications. Your society insists that rest is laziness and exhaustion is weakness. You push yourself until you burn out, then feel ashamed when you cannot maintain the pace, as if your depletion were a moral failure rather than a physical law. But the thermodynamicists understood what your culture refuses to acknowledge. You are not failing when you grow tired. You are obeying the second law of thermodynamics. You are a biological engine operating on finite fuel: the calories you consume, the neural resources you possess, the emotional reserves you draw upon. Every anxious thought you process, every task you complete requires energy, and that energy, once used, cannot be perfectly recycled. Some portion is always lost as heat, as disorder, as the slow wearing down of your capacity to continue. These Victorian prophets of decline offer you strange permission tonight. If the sun itself must eventually exhaust its fuel, if the mighty steam engines could not run forever, why do you expect yourself to be different? By lying here, by allowing your body to sink into rest, you are finally aligning yourself with the true nature of reality, ceasing the exhausting fight against entropy and honoring the limits that govern all things in this slowly cooling universe. Those Victorian prophets we encountered in their cold, darkened laboratories had glimpsed something that would haunt physics forever, but they did not yet possess the word for it. That word would come later, coined by Rudolf Clausius in the Prussian cold, entropy. It sounds clinical, mathematical, almost bureaucratic, yet beneath this austere terminology lies the most intimate truth about existence. Entropy is not merely a formula scrawled on blackboards, it is the mathematics of forgetting, the universe's gentle tendency toward letting go. Imagine holding a cup of tea in your hands right now, feeling its warmth radiating against your palms. The liquid inside burns with concentrated heat while the air around you remains cool and indifferent. Here exists a sharp distinction, a gradient, a beautiful tension between two states. But set that cup on your bedside table and watch what unfolds in the silence. The heat cannot remain imprisoned within those porcelain walls. It yearns to wander, to share itself with the surrounding coolness, molecule by molecule dispersing into the air until cup and room reach the same tepid temperature. The tea has not vanished. Every calorie of energy remains in your room, but something essential has been lost forever. The useful difference has dissolved into useless sameness. This is entropy, the cosmos's relentless drift toward equilibrium, toward the erosion of all distinctions, toward that final democracy where nothing stands apart because everything has been averaged into uniformity. It is why ice melts in warm water, why carefully organized drawers slowly descend into chaos, why the elaborate sandcastle you built with such patient care returns, wave by wave, to scattered grains indistinguishable from the rest of the shore. Consider your memories now. Those sharp-edged experiences that once cut so deeply into consciousness. The exact words of a particular argument. The precise color of light in a room where everything changed. The sting of a specific winter morning when someone said goodbye. Over time, entropy moves through these recollections like a patient editor, blurring details, softening harsh edges, allowing certain volumes in the library of your mind to gather dust until they can barely be read. Dates become approximate, faces lose their definition. Conversations that once rang with crystalline clarity fade into the gentle echo of tone and feeling. You might resist this forgetting, lying there with your anxious mind racing through endless loops of memory and worry. Your consciousness works overtime to maintain sharp boundaries between past and present, between yourself and others, between what happened and what might happen. Each anxious thought is a carefully constructed fortress, a castle of concern you rebuild every sleepless night. You are fighting entropy with every racing heartbeat, trying to keep the tea hot in a freezing universe. No wonder you feel so incredibly exhausted. But there is profound mercy hidden in this mathematics of dissolution. If entropy is the gradual smoothing of all rough edges, then your mistakes, your embarrassments, your heartbreaks are not permanent monuments carved in cosmic stone. They, too, are sandcastles. The concentrated energy of your pain will disperse. The sharp boundaries of your suffering will blur. The useful heat of your anguish will cool into manageable warmth. Entropy comes for your wounds as surely as it comes for the stars. Tonight, you can stop fighting this fundamental law. Sleep itself is entropy made personal, a dissolution of the rigid structures that define your waking self. A return to that undifferentiated state where boundaries soften and distinctions fade. You do not need to maintain perfect order in the filing cabinets of consciousness. You can let your thoughts lose their shape. Allow the hot, frantic energy of your mind to leak out into the cool, vast indifference of the darkness. The universe is teaching you, through every cooling cup and crumbling castle, that all effort eventually yields to rest, and in that yielding lies the deepest peace imaginable. Have you ever wondered why you can remember yesterday but not tomorrow? Why the harsh words you spoke in anger can never be drawn back into your throat? Why the relationships that crumbled cannot spontaneously reassemble themselves like scattered puzzle pieces finding their way back together? You lie there in the darkness, your mind playing scenes from your past like a damaged film loop. The conversation you wish you could redo, the choice that altered everything, the version of yourself you wish you could reclaim. This longing to reverse time's current is among the most human of desires, and among the most futile. The answer to why we cannot go home lies written in the fundamental architecture of reality itself. Time has a direction, an arrow that flies only forward, and this arrow is carved by entropy's relentless increase. Consider a simple scene. A wine glass tumbling from your bedside table, shattering into crystalline fragments across the floor. Now imagine that scene playing backward, the scattered shards leaping upward like silver birds, reassembling themselves into perfect form while spilled wine flows backward in a crimson fountain. Your mind immediately rebels against this reversed reality, recognizing it as impossible. Yet here lies the profound mystery. If you examine the individual physical laws governing each atom in that glass, each molecule of wine, you discover something startling. Newton's equations, Maxwell's electromagnetism, the quantum mechanics that govern matter itself, none of them contain an inherent preference for time's direction. At the microscopic level, the laws of physics work equally well forward or backward, like a film that makes sense whether played normally or in reverse. So why does the universe care which way time flows? The answer is entropy. The shattered glass represents a high entropy state, countless possible arrangements of fragments, all looking essentially the same, all equally disordered. But the intact glass represents low entropy. Only one very specific, precise arrangement of molecules produces that functional, beautiful form. The universe moves inexorably from rare, ordered configurations toward common, disordered ones, not because of cosmic preference, but because disorder vastly outnumbers order in the space of all possible arrangements. This is why your past lies behind an impenetrable wall. Every moment you have lived represents a lower entropy state than this present moment. The universe has been steadily shuffling itself into greater disorder since that conversation you replay endlessly, since that relationship you wish you could repair, since that younger version of yourself who felt so much lighter. To return would require the spontaneous decrease of entropy across vast swaths of reality, every molecule of air returning to its exact position, every neuron in your brain rewinding its firing pattern, the infinite ripples of causation flowing backward through an impossibly complex web of consequence. You engage in what we might call perpetual litigation with yesterday, your anxious mind serving as prosecutor, judge, and jury in a case that can never be retried. But the same physics that forbids your return also offers profound solace. If you cannot go back to your mistakes, then you are also freed from them. The past is not a prison you inhabit, but a country you have permanently departed. Think of yourself as a traveler on a river that flows only downstream. You may look back at the shore you have passed, longing for its remembered comfort, but the current carries you onward regardless of your desire. Fighting this current, trying to swim upstream to fix what has already dissolved into higher entropy, is the source of your exhaustion. Tonight, surrender to the flow. Accept that the glass is broken and will remain broken. The arrow of time is not your enemy, but your liberation, carrying you away from your pain with the same inexorable force that carries galaxies through space. You have no choice but to let go, and in that cosmic lack of choice lies your permission to finally rest. Sir Arthur Eddington, that great astronomer who first understood the nuclear furnaces burning within stars, once wrote with characteristic precision, "If your theory is found to be against the second law of thermodynamics, there is nothing for it but to collapse in deepest humiliation." This was not hyperbole, but scientific fact. The second law of thermodynamics stands as the most inviolate principle in all of physics, more fundamental than gravity, more absolute than the speed of light. It states, with devastating simplicity, that in any closed system, entropy always increases, never decreases, never remains constant, always inevitably, inexorably increases toward maximum disorder. You, lying there in the darkness with your mind racing through endless catalogues of undone tasks and unmet expectations, have been taught to hear this law as a threat. Your culture worships the opposite of entropy. From childhood, you absorbed the relentless message that a good life is an organized life. Inbox zero, optimized schedules, maximized productivity. You were raised on the mythology of control, taught that success means building elaborate systems to hold chaos at bay. Every cleaned room, every completed project, every moment of achieved calm represents a temporary victory against the universe's fundamental direction. But tonight, I want you to hear the second law differently. Listen to it not as a cosmic threat, but as the gentlest lullaby the universe has ever sung. It whispers to your exhausted soul, you do not have to keep everything in perfect order. You are not required to maintain constant control. Disorder is not your failure, it is the fundamental direction of reality itself. Consider the immense energy you expend each day fighting entropy's patient advance. Your desk accumulates papers despite your best organizational efforts. Your home requires endless maintenance against dust and decay. Your relationships demand perpetual attention to prevent the natural drift toward distance. Your body needs constant grooming, feeding, exercising to forestall its inevitable decline. Most exhausting of all, your anxious mind works ceaselessly to categorize and control, to keep thoughts properly filed and emotions appropriately contained. You are like a solitary figure standing on a beach at twilight, building an elaborate sandcastle while the tide comes in. You work with desperate precision, shoring up walls, smoothing towers, creating perfect geometric forms from shifting grains. But wave after patient wave approaches, each one carrying away a little more of your careful construction. The ocean does not hurry. It does not need to. It simply follows its nature. And that nature is entropy made liquid. The inexorable tendency toward equilibrium, toward the gentle democracy of sameness. The second law tells you to stop building, not because effort is meaningless, but because the universe itself does not require your perfectionism. Look at the cosmos. Galaxies drift into ever greater isolation, stars exhaust their fuel and collapse. Even the protons that form matter may eventually decay into scattered radiation. The universe is not anxious about its own dissolution. It does not lie awake at night worrying about its increasing disorder. It simply unfolds according to its deepest nature, moving from concentrated energy toward dispersed calm with the same serene inevitability that water flows downhill. Your insomnia, your anxiety, your desperate need to organize and perfect and control, these are manifestations of fighting the second law. You catalogue your failures, tasks left undone, emails unanswered, relationships that have cooled, plans that have unraveled. Each perceived failure is simply entropy expressing itself in your life. And your suffering comes not from the entropy itself, but from your belief that you should somehow be exempt from this universal principle. Imagine what it would feel like to stop resisting. Picture yourself stepping back from that sandcastle of self you have built, your career, your image, your carefully maintained plans and desperate hopes. The waves approach, and instead of frantically reinforcing your walls, you simply watch. There is no violence in this dissolution, no judgment, no malice, just a gentle, inevitable return to a simpler state. This is what sleep offers you each night, permission to dissolve. Your consciousness, that elaborate fortress of worry and planning, can finally release its rigid structure and flow back into undifferentiated darkness. The second law promises that you need not hold yourself together so tightly. In a universe rushing toward maximum entropy, your surrender is not defeat, it is the ultimate act of cosmic belonging. Tonight, you do not have to be the castle. You can be the water, flowing toward the same peaceful equilibrium that awaits all things in this slowly cooling universe. Look beyond your ceiling now, through the atmosphere, into that vast obsidian theater where ancient lights perform their slow dance of self-destruction. Each star you cannot see but know is there burns as a thermonuclear wound in the darkness, a sphere of plasma so massive that its own gravity crushes hydrogen atoms together with such violence that they fuse, releasing floods of energy that have traveled across impossible distances to reach this moment of your contemplation. These celestial bodies appear eternal from your brief human perspective, yet each one is engaged in a desperate act of self-consumption, racing toward inevitable exhaustion. A star begins in collapse, much like you began your own periods of burning intensity. Picture a vast, diffuse cloud of gas drifting through space for millions of years, scattered, unremarkable, at peace in its dispersal. Then gravity begins its patient work, drawing atoms inward until there comes that sacred moment when density becomes destiny. The pressure grows unbearable, the core temperature rises to millions of degrees, and suddenly, ignition. Nuclear fusion begins, and a star is born in an inward flash of violence that will define the rest of its existence. You, too, have lived through such moments of gravitational collapse. Perhaps it happened during your university years, when the scattered potential of your youth was drawn inward by expectation and ambition. Or in your career, when the weight of responsibilities compressed your focus until something ignited. That first taste of recognition, success, the intoxicating realization that you could shine. From that moment forward, your life became a single, continuous act of burning yourself to illuminate others. The physics of stellar death follows a cruel irony that your exhausted body knows intimately. The brightest stars die youngest. A massive blue giant burning with such fierce luminosity that it outshines our sun 1,000,000 times over will exhaust its nuclear fuel in mere millions of years. Meanwhile, small red dwarfs, those humble, barely visible stars, burn steadily for trillions of years, outlasting galaxies themselves. The universe rewards moderation and punishes brilliance with early extinction. Your burnout follows this same merciless law. Every hour of overwork, every night you traded sleep for productivity, every moment you pushed beyond your natural limits, these were acts of nuclear fusion in the reactor of your consciousness. You converted finite reserves of neurotransmitters, cortisol, glucose, and attention into outward performance. The praise you received, the temporary security, the fleeting sense of control, these were your light. The cost was internal, depleted reserves, mounting core pressure. A deepening fatigue that your culture taught you to ignore as weakness, rather than recognize as physics. The shame you carry about your exhaustion is as misplaced as a white dwarf feeling ashamed for no longer being a blue giant. When a massive star exhausts its fuel, what remains is not failure, but transformation. A dense, cooling ember that radiates the ghost of its former heat into the cosmic dark. These stellar remnants exist in quiet equilibrium with the darkness around them, no longer frantically fusing atoms, simply persisting in a lower energy state that honors their limits. You too may be entering your white dwarf phase, no longer burning with that unsustainable brilliance, but cooling, resting, existing in a dimmer mode that your productivity-obsessed world mistakes for death. Your depression, your inability to muster former energies, your need for stillness, these are not endings, but natural conclusions to a period of burning intensity. Tonight, the cosmos offers you the wisdom of stellar evolution. You are not required to maintain fusion indefinitely. You can let the fires in your mind die down to embers. You can enter the cooling phase that follows all periods of combustion, radiating whatever warmth remains without generating more. The universe does not condemn a star for learning to rest in the patient, forgiving dark, and neither should you condemn yourself for finally accepting the same cosmic invitation to peace. The cosmologists have mapped our future with mathematical precision, and it stretches before us cold beyond all imagining. We live in what they call the stelliferous era, the age of stars, but even this epoch of cosmic fire is drawing toward its inevitable close. In the deep future they describe, trillions of years from now, the last stars will exhaust their nuclear fuel and fade like dying embers in an infinite hearth. The great stellar nurseries, those vast clouds of gas and dust where new suns are born in violence and light, will have long since dissipated their material into the expanding void. One by one, galaxies will dim to darkness until the universe becomes a vast cemetery of cooling stellar corpses drifting through endless night. This cosmic winter approaches not through catastrophe, but through the patient mathematics of thermodynamics. As space itself expands, stretching like thinning fabric across ever greater distances, the same amount of energy must inhabit a vastly larger volume. The result is cooling, a soft, incremental decline in temperature that will continue until the universe approaches absolute zero, that theoretical point where even atoms cease their restless vibration and surrender to perfect stillness. All the concentrated heat of creation will have dispersed into the background radiation of space, leaving behind only the faintest whisper of warmth in an ocean of cosmic cold. You know this winter intimately, though you have never traveled to the far future. It lives inside you during those periods, when color seems to drain from the world like water from a broken vessel. When everything that once sparked joy or pain becomes distant, muted, filtered through layers of emotional permafrost. You move through the familiar motions of living, showering, eating, working, but these actions feel mechanical, performed by a body whose pilot has retreated somewhere unreachable. Friends speak to you and their voices arrive as if from across a vast, cold distance. Music that once moved you plays as mere organized noise. Even your own memories seem to belong to someone else, someone warmer, someone who could still feel the full spectrum of human experience. Your culture pathologizes this state entirely, treating emotional cooling as malfunction requiring immediate correction. The underlying message echoes through every therapeutic intervention. This numbness is wrong, abnormal, something to be fought and defeated as quickly as possible. You internalize this judgment and add shame to emptiness, creating a peculiar form of suffering, the pain of being unable to feel pain properly. But what if this emotional winter serves a purpose written into the architecture of consciousness itself? Consider how the universe survives its own cooling by entering lower energy states, reducing activity to match available resources. When winter strips the world of warmth, hibernating animals do not frantically maintain summer metabolism. They surrender to the cold, slowing their hearts to barely perceptible rhythms, entering profound conservation that allows survival through scarcity. Your numbness may be similar protective hibernation, your psyche's response to prolonged overstimulation or emotional depletion. Tonight, stop fighting the cold. The universe does not panic as it cools, does not frantically try to reignite dead stars. It accepts the temperature drop with infinite patience. You are invited to do the same, to let yourself be still, to drift like those future stellar remnants through the quiet dark, unburdened by the need to burn or shine or be anything other than what you are in this moment of necessary rest. In the winter of 1867, James Clerk Maxwell sat in his study in Aberdeen, Scotland, surrounded by the tools of his revolutionary work on electromagnetic theory. Outside, snow fell against windows already frosted with the breath of a dying year, and inside, by flickering gaslight, he conceived a thought experiment that would haunt physics for over a century. Picture a container divided by a partition with a tiny door, filled with gas molecules dancing their eternal, chaotic ballet. Now imagine a microscopic being stationed at this door, infinitely attentive, impossibly quick, watching each approaching molecule with supernatural precision. This demon, as it came to be known, would perform a seemingly simple task. When fast, hot molecules approached from the left, it would open the door, allowing them through. When slow, cold molecules approached from the right, the door would open again. Fast molecules from the right, slow from the left, the door would remain sealed. Through this selective sorting, the demon could gradually concentrate all the energetic molecules on one side and all the sluggish ones on the other, creating order from chaos without apparent effort, mocking the second law of thermodynamics itself. For decades, this paradox tormented scientists. The demon seemed to prove that with sufficient vigilance and control, entropy could be reversed, that consciousness might exempt itself from the universe's inexorable slide toward equilibrium. Maxwell's demon became the patron saint of the anxious mind. The fantasy that perfect attention could defeat disorder itself. You, lying there in your darkness, have been attempting to be Maxwell's demon your entire sleepless life. Your anxiety is the psychological manifestation of this impossible task. You stand at the door of consciousness, frantically sorting thoughts into acceptable and unacceptable categories, trying to allow only productive concerns through while blocking destructive ones. Every morning you wake with mental checklists attempting to sort the urgent molecules of your responsibilities from those that can wait. You monitor relationships with exhausting precision, trying to detect any cooling before it becomes irreversible. You believe your suffering stems from insufficient control, that if you could just be more vigilant, more organized, more attentive, you could finally impose order on existence's chaos. But in the 20th century, physicists like Leo Szilard and Rolf Landauer discovered something devastating about Maxwell's demon. The sorting itself generates entropy. To observe each molecule, the demon must acquire information, which requires energy. To remember previous measurements, it must store data in memory, and when that memory fills, it must be erased, a process that necessarily increases disorder elsewhere in the system. The demon cannot stand outside thermodynamics. Every act of measurement, memory and control produces waste heat. The very attempt to reduce entropy creates more entropy than it prevents. This is the thermodynamics of your exhaustion. Every hour spent monitoring and controlling, every night lying awake rehearsing conversations and planning contingencies, every moment of hypervigilance consumes enormous mental energy and generates its own disorder. The stress hormones flooding your system, the neural pathways worn deeper by repetitive worry. the relationships strained by your need for certainty. All represent entropy generated by your attempt to reduce entropy. You are burning yourself as fuel for an impossible task that the universe itself cannot perform. The resolution to Maxwell's paradox offers profound liberation. Control is not only impossible, but counterproductive. The demon's failure is not a flaw in the design, but a feature of reality itself. Tonight, you can finally resign from the exhausting position of demon at the door of consciousness. You can stop monitoring, stop sorting, stop believing that your vigilance prevents total collapse. The molecules will move as they will, mixing hot with cold, fast with slow, order with disorder, and the universe, including your small corner of it, will find its own equilibrium without requiring your constant intervention. In releasing the illusion of control, you discover the deepest rest imaginable. In the central cemetery of Vienna, among the weathered monuments to composers and kings, stands a simple white marble bust of a man whose eyes seem to carry the weight of cosmic understanding. Below his bearded visage, carved with mathematical precision into the stone, lies no comforting psalm or poetic farewell, but a single equation that unlocks the universe's deepest secret. Escor KLNW. This is the final resting place of Ludwig Boltzmann, the Austrian physicist who stared deeper into the nature of reality than perhaps any human soul could bear, and who paid the ultimate price for his terrible clarity. Picture him in the autumn of 1906, walking alone along the limestone cliffs of Duino near Trieste, where the Adriatic stretches endlessly toward a horizon that mirrors his own sense of isolation. The air carries the salt tang of ancient seas, and in the distance his wife and daughter swim in waters that seem to mock his inner darkness with their sparkling indifference. Boltzmann has spent decades translating the abstract concept of entropy into the language of probability, giving mathematical flesh to Clausius's thermodynamic ghost. His equation, destined for that Viennese tombstone, reveals entropy as a measure of disorder at the molecular level, specifically the logarithm of the number of possible microscopic arrangements that correspond to any given macroscopic state. But Boltzmann understood something that would torment him until his final breath. Order, meaning, and structure are statistically improbable accidents in a universe overwhelmingly biased toward chaos. Every moment of beauty you have witnessed, every carefully constructed meaning you have built, every human achievement that has ever moved you to tears, all of these exist as temporary islands of low entropy in an ocean trending inexorably toward maximum disorder. We are not building toward something permanent. We are briefly resisting an inevitable return to meaninglessness. His contemporaries could not bear this vision. They attacked his statistical mechanics, ridiculed his molecular theories, questioned his methods with the fury of those who sense their comfortable certainties crumbling. The scientific establishment of his era preferred deterministic predictability to probabilistic truth, and Boltzmann found himself increasingly isolated, defending insights he knew to be correct against a world that refused to see. He was a man out of time, working in an age that still doubted the existence of atoms, building bridges between microscopic chaos and macroscopic experience that his colleagues dismissed as elaborate fiction. You, lying there in your darkness, may recognize Boltzmann's burden as intimately your own. Like him, you see too clearly what others refuse to acknowledge. You understand that the relationship is ending, though your partner insists everything is fine. You recognize the unsustainability of your workplace culture while colleagues maintain cheerful denial. You perceive the slow unraveling of structures, personal, professional, societal, that others desperately pretend remain intact. This clarity does not feel like wisdom. It feels like curse, like being the only sober observer at a celebration of beautiful delusions. The loneliness of accurate perception corroded Boltzmann's spirit year by year. When you understand entropy deeply, when you recognize that all your efforts amount to temporary decreases in local disorder, while the universe's total disorder increases, motivation becomes philosophically problematic. Why organize the room when it will inevitably return to chaos? Why build the career when heat death awaits? Why love deeply when all bonds eventually dissolve according to the same statistical laws that govern molecular motion? In September of 1906, overwhelmed by depression and the fierce criticism of his scientific opponents, Boltzmann hanged himself in that Italian coastal town while his family played innocently in the bay. The man who quantified the universe's tendency toward disorder succumbed to an internal disorder he could no longer mathematically resolve. Yet his equation outlived him, carved into stone above his grave, quietly insisting that order arises and fades according to probability, not morality. Here is the strange comfort Boltzmann's tragic story offers you, anxious soul in the darkness. If your life is an improbable arrangement of particles that has somehow achieved consciousness, then so is your pain. Your panic, your shame, your sense of inadequacy, these are configurations, not commandments. They have no eternal authority, they are simply one-way matter, and memory have momentarily aligned. His statistical view of the universe reveals that low entropy states, like a living cell, a conscious mind, a moment of love, a night of peaceful sleep, are incredibly rare and improbable against the overwhelming odds of chaos. The fact that you exist at all, that you can think and feel and struggle with these very questions, is a statistical miracle. Given time, your suffering must loosen according to the same laws that govern everything else. Entropy itself becomes your ally, promising that every rigid self-judgment will eventually blur. Every unbearable emotion will diffuse into the background radiation of memory. You do not have to destroy your pain by force. You only need to outlast its sharpness, to let the statistics of forgetting work slowly in your favor. Tonight, honor Boltzmann not by carrying his burden, but by accepting his gift. The knowledge that your existence is a rare, beautiful fluctuation in the cosmic probability. A momentary island of order in the vast ocean of entropy. The sadness of the end does not negate the miracle of the now. You are here, against all statistical odds, conscious and breathing and learning to rest. This is not nothing, this is everything, for as long as it lasts. And lasting forever was never part of the equation. The language of physics often sounds austere, filled with forces and equations that seem to drain warmth from existence itself. Yet when cosmologists describe the ultimate fate of our universe, their calculations paint a picture that borders on the spiritual, a vision not of catastrophic destruction, but of the gentlest possible ending. They call it the heat death, though it is less death than the deepest possible sleep, less an explosion than an eternal cosmic exhalation. It is the moment when the universe finally stops striving and learns at last to rest. To understand this ending, begin with what you know intimately. All the processes that exhaust you require differences to survive. Your anxiety burns because there exists a gradient between who you are and who you believe you should be. Your heart pounds because pressure differences drive blood through chambers that mirror the chambers of your worried mind. A kettle boils because flame is hotter than water. A river flows because mountains stand higher than seas. Your thoughts race because electrical and chemical gradients spark across the neural pathways of consciousness. Everything that feels like something happening, every deadline that torments you, every relationship that demands energy, every moment of struggle depends fundamentally on imbalance, on the existence of differences that create tension and drive change. The second law of thermodynamics promises that these differences are temporary. Heat spreads out, heights erode, pressures equalize, energies disperse into ever greater volumes of space. Imagine this principle extended across impossible timescales to encompass all of existence. Trillions of years pass like pages in an infinite book. The last stars exhaust their nuclear fuel and fade like dying embers in a cosmic hearth grown cold. Black holes, those voracious mouths of gravity, devour the remaining matter and radiation, then slowly evaporate through Hawking radiation like ancient kings selling their crowns piece by piece to sustain their crumbling empires. Even the protons that form ordinary matter may decay, leaving behind only the thinnest possible bath of elementary particles spread almost perfectly evenly through the expanding fabric of space. In that final state, temperature becomes uniform everywhere across the infinite expanse. No hot, no cold, no high, no low. No gradients of any kind remain to drive the engines of change. Without temperature differences, no energy can flow, and without energy flow, nothing can happen. No chemical reactions can proceed. No thoughts can form. No suffering can exist because suffering itself requires the neurochemical processes of consciousness, which cannot operate without the energy gradients that heat death has forever erased. This is maximum entropy, the state toward which the second law has been guiding the universe since the violent asymmetry of the Big Bang. It is thermodynamic equilibrium extended to encompass everything, the democracy of temperature where nothing is warmer or colder, higher or lower, better or worse than anything else. Your culture teaches you to hear this vision as cosmic horror, as the ultimate nightmare of meaninglessness. But tonight, lying in your darkness with racing thoughts and an exhausted body, I invite you to hear it differently. Listen to the heat death as the universe's final lullaby, the promise of perfect, unending rest after an impossibly long day of burning and changing and struggling against entropy's patient tide.
Consider what this ending truly represents. A state where suffering becomes physically impossible, where all the tensions that torment your sleepless nights resolve forever into perfect peace. The heat death offers you radical philosophical permission. If the cosmos itself is moving toward this great stillness, not building toward a climax of achievement or supreme productivity, but slowly, patiently relaxing into a state of perfect equality where no part struggles against any other part, then your desire for rest is not laziness or failure.
It is cosmic alignment. Your exhaustion is not evidence of inadequacy, but recognition of a universal truth. Even the universe grows tired. Even reality itself yearns for the cessation of all demanding, the end of every burden that consciousness carries. Tonight you can practice your own gentle heat death, Allow the hot, frantic energy of your anxieties to disperse into the cool, accepting darkness surrounding you. Let the sharp distinctions between success and failure, past and future, self and other soften and blur like consciousness, spreading out like warmth from a dying ember, becoming thinner, wider, quieter. Sleep is your nightly rehearsal for this ultimate state, that moment when thoughts lose coherence, when the rigid boundaries of selfhood dissolve, when you participate temporarily in the peace that awaits all things at the end of time. The universe itself promises that this peace, unlike everything else, will last forever. In the cathedral darkness between galaxies, where space stretches thin and cold across distances that mock human comprehension, there exist structures so profound they seem less like physical objects and more like sacred wounds in the fabric of reality itself. These are black holes, the collapsed remnants of massive stars that have surrendered completely to their own gravity, creating regions where space-time curves so violently inward that not even light, the universe's swiftest messenger, can escape their grasp. They drift through the cosmic void like vast monasteries of absolute silence, spheres of such perfect isolation that they exist beyond all communication with the wider universe. To the anxious mind, black holes appear as cosmic monsters, voracious maws that devour everything within reach.
Yet through the patient mathematics of thermodynamics, they reveal themselves as something far more sacred, entropy's final temples, the places where disorder reaches its theoretical maximum, where the universe performs its most efficient act of forgetting. When Jacob Bekenstein first suggested in the 1970s that black holes must possess entropy, and Stephen Hawking confirmed this intuition with equations that shook physics to its foundations, they discovered that the surface area of a black hole's event horizon measures precisely the
amount of disorder hidden within that silent boundary. You know this gravitational darkness intimately, though you have never traveled to the edge of space-time. During your deepest episodes of despair, when the weight of existence becomes unbearable and simple tasks feel like climbing mountains in lead boots, you experience your own psychological event horizon. Depression tightens around you like gravity itself, pulling every thought, every possibility, every flicker of hope inward toward a dense core of numbness from which nothing seems capable of escaping. Friends call, opportunities present themselves, sunlight streams through windows, but all of it arrives as if from across an impossible distance, unable to penetrate the gravitational well of your interior darkness. The shame you carry about this collapse is as misplaced as a star feeling ashamed for obeying the laws of physics. Black holes are not anomalies that defy the second law of thermodynamics. They are its most devout manifestations, regions where matter and energy have been compressed beyond all resistance into states of maximum disorder. When your carefully constructed sense of self collapses under the weight of accumulated stress, when your mental universe shrinks to a singularity of exhaustion, you are not broken. You are following the same fundamental pattern that governs the most extreme objects in the cosmos. But here is where the story takes an unexpected turn toward mercy. In 1974, Stephen Hawking applied quantum mechanics to the event horizon and discovered something that revolutionized our understanding of these dark giants. Black holes are not truly black. Through a subtle quantum process at their boundaries, particle-antiparticle pairs spontaneously appear from the vacuum of space itself. Occasionally, one particle falls into the black hole while its partner escapes as Hawking radiation, carrying away a tiny amount of energy. Through this process, black holes slowly evaporate, leaking their mass back into the universe over timescales so vast they dwarf the current age of the cosmos. This means that even the universe's deepest abysses are temporary formations. Even black holes, those seemingly eternal prisons of gravity from which nothing can escape, contain within their mathematics the promise of their own dissolution. Given sufficient time, every black hole will evaporate completely, returning its captured matter and energy to the wider universe as the faintest whisper of thermal radiation. No darkness, regardless of its apparent permanence or absolute authority, lasts forever. Tonight you can draw profound comfort from this cosmic truth, the depression that feels like an inescapable gravitational well, the anxiety that seems to grow stronger the more you struggle against it, the sense of being fundamentally isolated behind an invisible boundary that others cannot cross. These psychological black holes obey the same ultimate law. They may feel eternal, but permanence is an illusion even for structures massive enough to trap light itself. Your darkness is evaporating, one quantum fluctuation at a time, one breath at a time, one moment of rest at a time. You do not need to blast your way out of your personal event horizon through sheer force of will. You only need to persist, to continue existing while entropy works its slow dissolution on even your most absolute suffering. The universe itself promises that no prison is completely perfect, no entrapment absolutely permanent, not even gravity's. In the patient mathematics of Hawking radiation lies your deepest permission to rest, knowing that even the cosmos's most perfect darkness eventually learns to let go. There exists a photograph that should be required viewing for every anxious soul lying awake in the darkness. In 1990, as the Voyager 1 spacecraft hurtled beyond Neptune toward the infinite void, Carl Sagan convinced NASA to turn its camera back toward home one final time. From nearly 4 billion miles away, it captured Earth as a single pixel, a pale blue dot suspended in a sunbeam, smaller than a grain of sand held at arm's length. Every person who has ever lived, every war fought, every fortune won and lost, every sleepless night you have endured, all compressed into that single point of light, invisible against the cosmic dark. You have been taught since childhood that your life blazes with cosmic significance, that the universe has reserved a particular purpose just for you. Teachers, parents, screens and stories repeat this fragile promise while you lie there tormented by its weight. The presentation where your voice trembled, the email with clumsy wording that haunts you still, the relationship that ended without closure, the deadline you missed, the exam you failed, the social error from 3 years ago that still causes your stomach to clench with remembered shame. Your mind catalogues these failures as if they were carved in cosmic stone, permanent records that define your worth in some celestial ledger. But thermodynamics whispers a different truth entirely. From our pale blue dot, zoom out to see our sun as one unremarkable star among 400 billion in the Milky Way galaxy. Zoom out again to see our galaxy as one among 2 trillion observable galaxies scattered through space like dust motes in an infinite cathedral. Against this backdrop, your anxieties contract to their true proportions, vanishingly thin threads of local disturbance in an indifferent sea of expanding space-time. The second law of thermodynamics, that patient prophet of dissolution we have been following together, promises that even this vast cosmic architecture is temporary. In 5 billion years, our sun will exhaust its hydrogen fuel and expand into a red giant, quite possibly engulfing the Earth that holds every trace of your embarrassments. Long before that cosmic immolation, the business that stressed you will have dissolved, the person whose opinion you desperately sought will have returned to dust, the social media post that mortified you will have been deleted by servers themselves decommissioned and recycled into forgotten metal. And this is merely our local ending. Extend the timeline to heat death itself. Those unimaginable trillions of years when even black holes evaporate and maximum entropy erases all distinctions. At that scale, the entire span of human civilization constitutes a microsecond in cosmic history, a brief flicker of ordered complexity in the universe's long journey toward equilibrium. Every achievement and failure, every moment of pride or shame will be equalized in the same gentle democracy of dissolution. Your culture demands you hear this cosmic perspective as nihilistic horror, as proof that effort is futile. But tonight, lying in your darkness, recognize it as the most profound liberation imaginable. What we might call cosmic nihilism becomes medicine for the worried mind. If nothing lasts, if entropy erases all distinctions, then you are freed from the crushing weight of eternal consequence. Your mistakes are not carved in bedrock, but written in water, already being smoothed away by time's patient tide. Consider how much of your anxiety stems from imagined observers, co-workers, classmates, strangers, ghosts from your past, who people your inner universe with scrutinizing eyes. But step back into the cold, clear vacuum of the real universe, where distances swallow even enormous stars into points of vanishing brightness, and notice almost nothing is watching. The cosmos is serenely indifferent to your curated image, your metrics, your invisible competitions. This insignificance becomes sanctuary. You are free to make mistakes, because those mistakes are temporary disturbances in a universe trending toward absolute forgetting. You can stop treating every decision as if it echoes through eternity. Stop carrying the fantasy that your failures are somehow exempt from the universal dissolution that awaits all things. In accepting your own smallness, you find strange dignity. You are part of the universe's brief experiment with consciousness before it returns to sleep. You need not earn your place here. You are as temporary and real as sunlight, requiring no apology for fading when evening comes. We have journeyed together through the universe's slow dissolution, watched stars exhaust their nuclear hearts, witnessed black holes evaporate into whispered radiation, contemplated that final state of heat death where all temperatures equalize and change becomes impossible. To the classical mind, this vision represents absolute conclusion. A cosmos frozen in perfect equilibrium, where even the faintest tremor of activity has been smoothed away by entropy's patient hand. Yet quantum mechanics, that strange and beautiful theory governing reality's deepest foundations, whispers a secret that even maximum entropy cannot silence. True nothingness is forbidden by the laws of existence itself. Picture the deepest vacuum imaginable. A region of space emptied of all matter and energy, cooled to absolute zero, stripped of every particle and photon. Classical physics would describe this as perfect emptiness, a blank canvas of pure nothing. But when physicists peer into this apparent void with the mathematical instruments of quantum field theory, they discover something extraordinary. The vacuum seethes with restless activity. Particle-antiparticle pairs spontaneously materialize from nowhere, flicker into brief existence, then annihilate back into the quantum foam from which they emerged. These virtual particles populate even the emptiest regions of space with a subtle, ceaseless dance of creation and destruction. This is not poetic metaphor, but experimentally verified reality. The Casimir effect demonstrates that quantum fluctuations exert measurable forces between closely spaced metal plates. The Lamb shift in atomic spectra confirms their influence on electron energy levels. Even in the deepest void, quantum mechanics ensures that the universe never achieves perfect stillness. According to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, energy and time share a relationship that allows brief violations of conservation laws. The vacuum itself borrows energy to create these ephemeral particles, then immediately repays the debt. Emptiness, it seems, is secretly industrious. You, lying there in your darkness feeling like nothing, like absence, like void incarnate. You know this emptiness with devastating intimacy. Depression often manifests not as dramatic anguish, but as profound absence. The sense that the essential substance of yourself has dissipated beyond recovery. You inhabit your life like a ghost haunting its own existence, going through motions that feel borrowed from someone who once cared about outcomes. This numbness feels like personal heat death, where all the energy that once animated you has leaked away into the indifferent background radiation of existence. But quantum mechanics offers unexpected solace to this void state of being. If even perfect vacuum contains the seeds of spontaneous creation, if uncertainty itself ensures that absolute stillness remains impossible, then your emptiness is not as empty as it feels. Beneath the numbness, beneath the sense of being nothing, quantum processes continue in the neural substrate of consciousness. Thoughts arise unbidden like virtual particles from the vacuum of awareness, brief, almost imperceptible stirrings that flicker in and out of existence before your conscious mind can assign them meaning. These are your quantum fluctuations, the half-formed curiosity, the faint wish to hear a particular song, the passing thought that tomorrow might be marginally less heavy. You need not amplify these subtle movements tonight. They are quantum-scale motions of the soul, too delicate to register as hope, yet contradicting the lie that you are finished. What feels like nothingness to you is actually pregnant potentiality. A low-energy state where the heavy structures of identity and expectation have collapsed, creating the vacuum space necessary for something entirely new to emerge. Tonight, rest in the strange comfort that even nothing is something in quantum mechanics. Your void trembles with the same fundamental uncertainty that prevents the universe itself from achieving perfect silence. You are not required to generate your own renewal, you need only persist while quantum processes work their patient, probabilistic magic beneath the surface of awareness, preparing fluctuations you cannot yet perceive but which physics promises must eventually come. We have journeyed together across the vast architecture of entropy, from those cold, darkened Victorian laboratories where prophets first glimpsed the universe's mortality, through the mathematics of forgetting past dying stars and evaporating black holes, to that final state of heat death where all gradients dissolve into perfect, eternal peace. Now, in this penultimate meditation, we arrive at the philosophical threshold where cosmic knowledge transforms into personal wisdom, where understanding the universe's trajectory finally allows you to stop resisting your own. Equilibrium is the state toward which all thermodynamic systems inexorably drift. That condition where temperatures equalize, pressures balance, chemical potentials align, and no driving force remains to compel further change. A cup of tea reaches equilibrium with the cool room surrounding it, heat dispersing until inside and outside achieve the same gentle temperature. A compressed gas expands until its pressure matches atmospheric conditions. Your racing thoughts, given permission, will eventually settle into the same neutral baseline as the darkness that holds you. This is not defeat, but the natural resolution of all tensions, the cosmic default to which everything returns when left alone. The Stoic philosophers understood this principle long before thermodynamics gave it mathematical precision. Marcus Aurelius, writing by candlelight in military camps along the Danube, counseled acceptance of what lies beyond our control, not passive resignation, but active recognition that the universe operates according to its own nature, indifferent to our preferences. These ancient voices harmonize perfectly with the second law. Both teach that peace comes from aligning ourselves with existence's fundamental direction rather than exhausting ourselves in futile opposition. Your anxiety is fundamentally a war against equilibrium. You lie there cataloguing all the ways your life deviates from some imagined ideal state, the career that should progress faster, the relationships that should feel different, the mind that should function more smoothly. Each should represent a gradient you believe requires correction, a temperature difference demanding your intervention. You have appointed yourself Maxwell's demon once again, frantically sorting the molecules of your existence into proper categories, never resting, because rest would allow entropy's patient advance. But thermodynamics offers radical permission to stop fighting. If equilibrium is inevitable, if the universe itself moves inexorably toward states where all distinctions dissolve, then your resistance to your current state is not noble struggle, but argument with physics itself. The exhaustion you feel is not weakness, but the natural consequence of opposing a law more fundamental than gravity. You are trying to swim upstream in a river that encompasses all of reality. And the current is winning because the current must win. Tonight, your bed becomes a tiny arena of equilibrium. The mattress rises gently to meet your body's weight. Your body sinks until pressure balances perfectly. Each breath negotiates between inside and outside, oxygen and carbon dioxide trading places until your blood reaches the level it needs. Heat spreads from your skin into surrounding air until temperatures softly align. You do not need to orchestrate this process. It happens through the same patient physics that governs cooling stars. What you can release is the fantasy of control, the exhausting belief that you should override thermodynamics through willpower alone. Your depression is not a problem you fail to solve, but a low-energy state your system has entered, perhaps necessarily, after prolonged periods of unsustainable burning. Your insomnia is not punishment, but temporary inability of your arousal systems to reach equilibrium with the encompassing darkness. This is the great equilibrium. Not a destination requiring effort, but a natural state you can finally stop preventing. Let the hot, frantic energy of your thoughts disperse into the cool, accepting void. Let the pressure of responsibilities equalize with your actual capacity. The universe has been practicing this surrender for 13.8 billion years. Learning to rest in what is rather than strain toward what might be. Tonight, you need only follow its ancient patient example and allow yourself to finally drift into the same profound acceptance that governs galaxies and atoms alike. We arrive now at the place where words begin their own entropy, where meaning disperses like heat into the vast, accepting darkness. You have journeyed with me across impossible distances and timescales. from those cold, darkened Victorian laboratories to the final photon fading in deep space. From Maxwell's demon to Boltzmann's burden, through the mathematics of forgetting to the physics of perfect rest. The story of the universe has carried us from concentrated fire to dispersed ash, from brilliant complexity to gentle equilibrium. There is nowhere else to travel now, no further concepts to grasp. Only the long, inevitable drift into the silence that has been waiting for all things since the beginning of time. The universe is learning to sleep, and you are its most conscious student. Trillions of years from now, in that far future we have contemplated together, the last star will exhale its final breath of light into the expanding void. The final temperature gradient will flatten into perfect uniformity. All the sharp distinctions that create suffering, hot and cold, self and other, past and future, success and failure, will dissolve into the same gentle democracy of maximum entropy. This is not tragedy, but homecoming. The return of all temporary complexity to the simple, undifferentiated peace from which it briefly emerged like a wave, rising from and returning to an infinite sea. You are practicing this return right now, with each breath releasing a little more of the rigid structure that holds you apart from the encompassing dark. Your thoughts, those sharp-edged constructions that cut through consciousness all day, are softening now, blurring at the edges, losing their insistent clarity like ice melting in warm water. The boundaries between your body and the darkness grow permeable. You are becoming less defined, less distinct, dissolving gently like a grain of salt in vast, patient water. Feel how entropy moves through your awareness like a kind editor, blurring harsh details, softening the sharp edges of worry, allowing the concentrated heat of anxiety to leak out into the cool, indifferent void surrounding you. The second law that governs galaxies governs your consciousness too. All energy disperses, all gradients flatten, all fires dim to embers, and then to ash, and then to the same temperature as the space between stars. There is no effort required here. No striving towards sleep. The universe does not strain toward heat death, it drifts, patient and inexorable as cosmic expansion itself. You need only stop resisting the current that carries all things toward equilibrium.
Let the temperature of your thoughts cool degree by gentle degree, approaching the same stillness that waits in the vacuum between atoms, in the spaces where light has not yet reached, in the silence before the Big Bang, in the darkness after all burning ends. Your body grows heavy with the weight of entropy, or perhaps weightless. The distinction dissolving matter itself is mostly empty space. You are mostly void, mostly silent, mostly the dark between thoughts. And the dark is kind, has been waiting, knows, you remembers when you were not yet born, when you were simply potential energy, simply possibility, simply the peace that preceded consciousness. Entropy increases always, gently,
inevitably carrying away the rigid structures of tomorrow, smoothing the temperature differences between should and is, erasing the gradients that drive suffering, all pressures equalizing, all distinctions fading, all things drifting toward the great equilibrium, the patient stillness, the eternal rest. Drift now deeper into the spaces between, where nothing needs to happen, where nothing can happen, where the universe holds you in its long, slow, gentle exhale toward the final, perfect silence, and you are already there, have always been there, will always be there, in the quiet, in the dark, in the peace, where everything finally rests,